Jacob Charleston versus the Los Santos Sheriff's Department. Mr. Harold Simmons, would you like to begin?
No, the plaintiff can go first.
Good evening, Your Honor. So, on 6/15/2021, around 5:34 p.m. Eastern Time, my client, Jacob Charleston, was shot by police at 9062 in an alleyway off of Northwest Jamestown Street. Mr. Charleston is going to be suing for $600,000 to cover all medical bills and legal fees and helping his family get back off their feet from going into debt from the surgeries it took. My client, Jacob Charleston, was just trying to make it home to his 3 children and his wife when the Lssd SWAT team pulled his vehicle over for no good reason. My client, scared for his life, pulled out his BB gun in order to scare away any possible fake police, as the SWAT team is a unit group used for extreme situations and would not normally pull any driver over. From my suspect's point of view, these 2 officers could have been fake officers trying to rob him for everything he had, and if the jury or you will pay close attention to the case, you will see that my client, Jacob Charleston, was only guilty of trying to protect himself from being robbed and possibly kidnapped.
Your Honor, upon the incident that occurred approximately 2 days ago on the 15th of this month of June, 15th, 2021, we, the defense, we find the plaintiff here guilty on all charges of attempted murder of a law enforcement officer, and we proclaim the shooting that occurred between law enforcement justified. Hence, the firearm deemed to be, even though it was deemed to be fake, it seemed to be a real weapon, as he pulled into a alleyway after being on a traffic stop. Not even 2 seconds, he steps out of his vehicle, aims the fake firearm at an officer, and is shot by police.
All right.
You said Mr. Charleston was found guilty for attempted murder?
No, we find. Or no, excuse me. We find the shooting justified. Excuse me.
Oh, okay. Continue.
All right. So, as he said, the initial stop took place in an alleyway. As put in the Los Santos Sheriff's Department, as they are properly trained, all officers should know where and where not to pull over their suspects. In the SOP, it clearly states that traffic stops should be initiated in well-lit areas, open areas, side of roads, and parking lots. It tells you to stay away from dark areas, wooded or brushed areas, alleyways, or on/off ramp.
Yeah.
My client, knowing where he was parked, any actual law enforcement officer would have told him to move his vehicle and would not have even exited their vehicle at all.
Your Honor, that is absolutely ridiculous. As shown in the video that I have here, it is slightly impossible for the deputies to notify the suspect to move his vehicle, the plaintiff to move his vehicle, as how quickly he stepped out of his vehicle and aimed the firearm at the officers. Now, the plaintiff here stated in his opening statement that the plaintiff feared for his life, that they were fake police officers, but any normal civilian would have pulled over to the side of the road and called 911. And for this to be an affiliated area and for the plaintiff to be wearing affiliated clothing, I can understand, and I hope you do as well, Your Honor, that the officer has feared for his life, and that's why the suspect was shot.
Mr. Simmons, what do you classify as a normal citizen?
I'm sorry?
As you stated in your
anybody else would have pulled. Anybody else has pulled over would have pulled over and contacted 911, or would have got the credentials of the officers identifying themselves as deputy. They wouldn't have stepped out with a fake BB gun and aimed it at police.
Second off, I'd also like to point out that none of the officers made any sort of contact with my client telling him to put the weapon down. Instead, they stepped out of their vehicle, guns fully drawn with an AR, and shot him without telling him to put the weapon down or to get back in his vehicle.
Reasoning being for this, Your Honor, is because the plaintiff immediately stepped out of his vehicle and upped a weapon as in he aimed a weapon at officers. He never immediately held it. He made no contact with the officers. The officers barely had time to make contact with him. He stepped out of his vehicle, immediately aimed the firearm at officers, and then he was then shot. I don't think that any police officer, sheriff deputy, or a highway patrol officer within the state of San Andreas would even take time to try to initiate a conversation with a individual that is likely trying to take their life, excuse me. I would actually like to present this video to you and let you watch and see how quickly this scenario happened. And I'd also like to point out how traffic stops are the most dangerous situations any officer can be placed involved in, and I can understand why the sheriff deputies feared for their life. May I show you this video?
We will watch the video in a minute. Mr. Brown, your response.
Right. So as he said, there really was not enough time for any conversation to happen. Although instead of after seeing the male with his firearm, they should have not stepped out of their vehicle and drawn theirs. Instead, pull off and request more units instead of trying to fight a unarmed male.
That, once again, Your Honor, is absolutely ridiculous. It is the job of law enforcement to protect the citizens of Los Santos and all citizens of the state of San Andreas. Them backing out of that alleyway could have caused immediate harm to anyone in that area, anyone that was driving by, civilians, etc. But I'd also like to point out Mr. Charleston's previous record. 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon and previously rape. And he also has many other felonies and misdemeanor on here as well. And this scenario is not really, shocking to me, since he has 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon and assault on a public official. So these type of actions are really not surprising to me, and I hope, Your Honor, is not surprising to you as well. The officers stepped out of their vehicle, fearing for their life, immediately took cover behind their vehicle, and proceeded to shoot 1 shot at the suspect. No excessive force was never shown, but had the plaintiff complied, the situation wouldn't have escalated, because that is how all traffic stops escalate in the state of San Andreas. Everyone wants to think they're right, or they say, well, I feared for my life. Nobody aims any sort of weapon, real, fake, plastic, metal, at an officer because they fear for their life. It is absolutely ridiculous, and the plaintiff should have called 911.
I would like to point out the inaccuracy in your last statement. As you said, there was only 1 shot fired. There were at least 4 shots fired at my
Excuse me,
client.
1 shot that only hit your client.
Although there were 4 shots fired, correct?
But yes, correct. Although 1 shot only hit your client. So no excessive force was deemed there. Please understand that a traffic stop is the most dangerous situation an officer can be placed into, as it escalates very quickly. Things happen very fast. And your client stepped out of the vehicle and immediately aimed a firearm at officers. No communication was nothing. Just immediately out of the car, up a gun, and aiming at officers.
I would also myself like to present the video to the court and to the judge himself.
Before we do that, bailiffs, what's going on with these 2 gentlemen sitting in the jury seats out of dress code?
Hey, get the medical records. Yeah, I'm gonna get it.
All right. Please rise and follow me. 2 gentlemen.
For what?
I'm requesting you leave.
For what?
I'm requesting you to leave due to proper outfit. I'm gonna give you 1 last warning. Please leave immediately.
I don't got money for these outfits, though. So,
Same for you, who else is sitting down. Please leave.
yo, let's go, motherfucker. Let's get a gloves, brother.
May we proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
I'd also like to read out the arrest report submitted by former San Andreas State Police Officer Jay Andrews on the 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon and assault on a public official on Mr. Charleston here. if I may.
You may.
Start.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm gonna get out. Yeah.
The summary of the arrest report states: 704 responded to a 911 call at the 24/7 in Sandy Shores about a robbery that is occurring. When 704 arrived, he put his hands on his service pistol that was holstered. He called for anybody inside without a response. Walked a little bit towards the door, and a shot from a shotgun rang out of the door. Over the radio, 704 can be heard using profane language for a split second, and then the radio was silenced. A few seconds later, he calls for more additional units. That is when 705, 721, and 1 Adam 45 responded. When they arrived, more shots were heard. 704 began negotiations with the suspect, suspect being Mr. Charles here, excuse me. Yeah, 704 began negotiations with the suspect. After 5 minutes of negotiations, 704 stated, "When I count to 10, that's it." He counted to 10, and the suspect did not give up. The suspect was asking for a kiss. That is when 704 told the units that to hold their positions and do one desperate last attempt to make this a peaceful situation and de-escalate it for the better. He told the suspect if he were to come out, he will give him a kiss that you want under one condition: that he drops all of his weapons and he comes outside with his hands up facing away. The suspect complied and then was detained, but then later arrested. So these type of scenarios where Mr. Charleston places officers into dangerous scenarios is not the first time. And I'd also like to place out how he's endangered other people's life in a rape charge that he was charged for, which is irrelevant to this case, so I will not bring it up.
Sir.
I first would like to ask how this situation comes with the situation.
Because Mr. Charleston's aggressiveness towards law enforcement and his threat to law enforcement is not a surprise. And
all right, upon approaching to the traffic stop. Apologies, sorry. Upon coming to the traffic stop,
You may not, sir.
the other officers would have no idea of what my client's previous record was and should have no reason to immediately fear for their lives.
They didn't. They feared for their lives as soon as the
sir, I'm
suspect
gonna
stepped out of
request you
his
turn
vehicle
around
with a
and leave.
firearm, immediately aiming it at the suspect. Suspect being Mr. Charleston.
I would like to approach the judge with a medical record saying my suspect was actually shot 2 times in the chest.
I'm gonna need you to hold off. All evidence must be passed up to the bailiff.
Of course.
Maybe before that evidence is submitted, Your Honor, can we please watch this video that occurred on the day of June 15th, 2021?
Yes, that must be passed through the bailiff.
Okay. Gentlemen.
Show them the dash cam too.
I would like to ask where this evidence was obtained from.
This evidence was obtained from the Durango that was involved, that the sheriff deputies have signed out that day. Your Honor, I'd also like to say when you watch that video, you can actually hear the officers did scream, "Get back into the vehicle," which the suspect failed to comply.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'd also like to point out the plaintiff's defense here agreed to the fact that the plaintiff was, or excuse me, Mr. Charleston was shot once, and he is now stating that he was shot twice.
Your Honor, I would also like to point out that this footage shown is not from a Durango perspective. It's actually from my client's vehicle's perspective. So I asked, is there any police body cam footage or police Durango footage?
As that is happening, I do have a few questions of my own. Number one, Mr. Please hold. Mr. Charleston,
Yes.
as it can be heard in the video, you do the second you do step out of your vehicle, you immediately pull a firearm, whether real or not, and you immediately say, "Hands up." What did you mean by that?
Well, I'm gonna correct you here. First off, it was not a firearm. It's a BB gun. So therefore.
I said whether real or fake. Just please answer the question.
Right. Okay.
Court is currently
So
in session.
essentially, I was saying hands up and like, you know,
Court is currently in session.
trying to get them to drop their weapon, etc., etc.
I wanna get in.
Why?
Court is currently
Because
in
I was
session.
scared. I didn't know if it was
I wanna
a real
watch.
cop or because there was no badge. It wasn't marked. So how am I supposed to know?
Get in.
But you cannot do that, sir. Court is currently in session.
I'd also like to state, Your Honor, there is a reason why red and blue lights exist on a police vehicle.
Yes, but someone can buy them from eBay or Mega Mall.
But you wouldn't. But respectfully, you wouldn't know that because you didn't give them a chance to approach. You immediately threatened their life with a fake firearm. And even if they were false police officers, what is a BB gun going to do besides intimidate you or get yourself shot by somebody else?
Mr. Charleston should be quiet this time. I also would like to point out there's also sirens on these vehicles for a reason, as there are no sirens activated.
I would like the plaintiff to answer the question.
Can you please say the question one more time?
Mr. Simmons.
The plaintiff, I'm the defendant. What is the question?
I don't know. I'm asking Mr. Charleston to answer the question that you asked.
Oh yeah. So what is a fake firearm going to do in a scenario like that? Because from my personal experience, fake police officers, they don't bring fake guns. They bring real guns. And a fake gun isn't going to save you too far in situations like that, especially in an affiliated area while wearing affiliated clothing.
Who said I was affiliated with anything?
I didn't say you were affiliated with anything. I said you were in an affiliated area wearing affiliated clothing. You were in an area known as the Vago Street Gang wearing purple, known as the Balla Street Gang clothing.
Okay, well, to answer your question about the BB gun, that was just it wasn't meant to harm them, it was meant to scare them.
And scaring real or fake police officers with either way, isn't that still intimidation, which is still illegal, which you just also admitted to?
What the fuck?
I would also like to point out that intimidation is not illegal if you're in fear for your life.
Fear of life?
Well, if they're fake police
Having
officers pulling him over,
but you wouldn't know that because you didn't give them a chance.
They didn't have any visible badge on them.
You wouldn't be able to tell because he immediately stepped out of the vehicle and started aiming it at police officers. You wouldn't be able to see a badge from his standpoint.
You would be able to see a badge.
Order. There will be no shouting or arguing in this courtroom. It is merely a discussion.
I apologize, Your Honor. When in the video it shows your client stepping out of the vehicle, aiming a fake BB gun, claimed, at officers, and before they even stepped out of the vehicle, there's no way he'd be able to identify if they're real or fake cops or not, visible badge or not.
I would like to point